Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Susan Poizner is a journalist, filmmaker, urban orchardist, and she has created orchardpeople.com. And for the past couple of weeks, her book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast, has been on the Amazon #1 bestseller in the gardening and horticultural fruit section. Welcome to the program, Susan.
Hi, so nice to be here. Hi, guys.
Well, we're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to have you. Congratulations. Get a book on #1 bestseller. That's not an easy task to accomplish, no matter what category you're in.
Well, I'm very excited about it. That's all I can say.
I'm sure, yeah. What inspired you to create orchardpeople.com?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I don't know. Fruit trees can be challenging. Let me put it this way. I don't know if you guys have had these challenges before, but when I decided to plant fruit trees, I was, a gardener. I love doing organic gardening in my backyard. I actually, for a while, had a job working for the city of Toronto as a gardener. So I wasn't, I was aware of organic gardening, and I thought, hey, I have a great idea. Let's plant some fruit trees in my local park. And I did that, and I knew I needed to mulch the trees. I mean, trees need mulching, but that's kind of it. I knew we had to water the trees, but little did I know, fruit trees are they can be a little high maintenance if you don't know what you're doing. And this was a public park, and I didn't want this project to be a total disaster. Me and the other volunteers would not look good if it didn't work out. Anyways, long story short, our trees had many challenges, and it took me a year or two before I realized, oh my gosh, I better do something. And I looked for people to teach me. I looked for online courses. The one online course that I found was in the UK and cost over $1,000. And I'm like a community orchardist here. I don't want to pay $1,000 just to learn. The books that I found were not easy for me because they were from different climates. And a lot of them were talking about the wonderful different varieties of fruits that I can plant and stuff that just didn't resonate with me. So I created orchardpeople.com and my online courses and my podcast and all the articles because that's what I needed when I started growing fruit trees. So now that I have done this for 14 years, over the years, I've learned more and more. And my goal is to be for other people what I needed, to be that mentor and guide that will help other people be successful with their fruit trees and with their orchards.
Well, I don't know if you have it in your city, but we have professional landscapers that will mound that mulch up half the side of the trunk of the tree, volcanic mulch it, and think there's nothing wrong with it. And I don't understand how they are not taught that is wrong.
Well, you're talking to somebody who has literally knocked on doors to say, excuse me, you're not supposed to do that to your tree. And it's bad with any landscape tree, but, with fruit trees, what happens is you can get boring insects crawling into that mulch and then making holes in your trees, crawling up your trees. I mean, fruit trees, native trees have challenges too, but fruit trees have more challenges. Native trees do lots of great stuff. They shade the neighborhood, they beautify the community, they blossom, they're gorgeous, they clean our air, they stabilize our soil. And fruit trees do all of the above, but they also feed us. They need more love and attention. They are pretty much always grafted, so they're made up of two different trees. They're high maintenance. And if a fruit tree is not healthy, it's a mess. The fruit is not delicious. It will be wormy. It will be unappealing. And to make things worse, those pests and diseases that you get on a neglected fruit tree will then go and spread around the whole neighborhood. So yes, I'm one of the crabby people who will knock on doors, who will speak my mind, and people just think I'm nuts.
Well, you're doing a good thing. With your fruit trees, are you of the mindset that it needs to be shaped in a certain way, or you let nature take its course, and if it wants to grow a certain way, let it be?
It absolutely, absolutely needs to be shaped in a certain way. Absolutely. And here is why. Because I want my fruit trees to produce delicious tasting fruit. And what happens with fruit trees, it's a crop more than a tree. It's horticulture more than arboriculture. And so what we want is to ensure that every piece of fruit, every branch has equal access to sunshine, because then the fruit will size up and ripen up properly. If your tree has a mess of branches, you'll have lots of fruit. It will be small because there's only a limited amount of energy that the tree has. So it can make 200 pieces of fruit, and each piece of fruit will be kind of hard and maybe bitter and not really that good and not sun ripened. Or you can prune the tree correctly and you'll have fewer branches. Each branch will have access to sunshine, lots of air circulation, and you'll have 75 pieces of fruit or 100 pieces of fruit, but they will be sweet and delicious and wonderful and healthy. So, to answer your questions, yes, pruning is one of the most wonderful and funnest parts of fruit tree care, but it's also one of the most important. Not only does it keep your crop and delicious and healthy, but it will keep the fruit tree healthy. Correct pruning helps protect fruit trees from pest and disease problems, and I can explain why if you want.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so the reason is that, for instance, fungal diseases, which I'm sure you guys know, are such a problem with fruit trees. Pretty much 80% of all diseases that fruit trees get, and there are a lot of them, are fungal diseases. And fungal diseases absolutely love dark, humid areas. That's where they gather these fungal spores. So what happens is if the canopy of your fruit tree gets overgrown, then when it rains, the rain and the moisture stays in the canopy and it doesn't dry out, the sun doesn't penetrate, the wind doesn't blow in there, and so you get more and more fungal diseases. And the same thing with pests. Pests also like dark conditions. They can go and do their mischief and nobody catches them, nobody gets rid of them. So pruning is one of the things is it protects your fruit tree from fungal diseases and pests. The other thing it does, and I'll tell you guys a funny story, in 2013 we had a terrible ice storm here in Toronto. And this city was a mess. Like all the big trees, all sorts of trees were falling down, branches broken, cars smushed. And then you'd go to our orchard, which was relatively young at the time, and our young trees that had been pruned properly for, I think, 4 years at that point, not one branch was broken, not one branch. And the reason is because when you prune your fruit tree correctly, you are creating a strong fruit-bearing structure for your tree. It's strong enough to hold a heavy harvest. So a bit of ice or even a lot of ice is not a problem. So those are a couple of the reasons why pruning fruit trees is super important.
Fantastic. So a lot of people are going apple picking right now. What are some tips for people to store them to get the most out of their apple harvest?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually, and it's something I had an article written about on my newspaper. It's in my in orchardpeople.com. on my website, because I was curious about that as well. I am so enjoying the fruit at this time of year. And yes, I freeze a lot of different types of fruits, but apples, there's something special about a fresh apple. So here's what we discovered. There's a couple of steps to storing fruit correctly, apples in particular correctly. And the first thing is, if you are growing the apples yourself, you want to harvest them a wee bit earlier than you would ordinarily. So what you need to do is a couple of weeks before you think it's time to harvest, start tasting the apples and see what they look like. Slice open the apples and have a look at the seeds. If the seeds are white or light colored, it's not ripe enough to harvest. But if the seeds are black, even if the fruit isn't 100% as ripe tasting as you think it will be, that's when you harvest it, because after you take the fruit off the tree, it will continue to ripen. So that's one step. And the second step is you need to store those apples correctly. So the problem is we have two things going on. After you harvest your apples, they produce ethylene gas. And ethylene gas accelerates the ripening of fruit, and it eventually causes the rotting of fruit. The second problem is when apples are off the tree and they're not being sort of fed by the mother tree with nutrition and moisture and, liquid nutrition, they dehydrate and shrivel up. We don't want those things to happen. So what you do is when you take your apples, when you buy them from the market, you put them into a bag, like a Ziploc bag that can be sealed. But you poke holes in the bag. You can use a hole punch to do it even. I don't know if people have hole punches anymore. In my days, they used to. But you can punch some holes in the bag, and then you can put it in your fridge. And what you want is you can put it in the drawer in the fridge or somewhere in the fridge where the temperature is, let's say, 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So you put the apples in the bag, you seal the bag, but it has holes. The holes will allow the ethylene gas to escape. But what the bag does is it keeps the moisture in. That humidity will stop those apples from drying out. So that's the best of both worlds. And in some cases, depending on the cultivar, you can keep those apples for 3 months or more just by doing that.
Get them out of that plastic bag that you pick them at the orchard there.
Yeah, those plastic bags, they won't be sort of Ziplocs that actually seal, right?
Right.
So, yeah, they won't help too much.
Well, before we let you go, I would like you to tell us what our listeners can find when they pick up your #1 bestseller book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast. What can we expect?
Well, here's what they can expect, and I'll tell you guys why I wrote it. I wrote it because a lot of people want to grow fruit trees, and so they kind of shoot from the hip, and they go to the garden center, and they buy a tree, plant it, just like I did, by the way. They plant it, and then they get a bunch of surprises. So I wrote my book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast, and I designed it to be a quick read for busy people, like me, like you guys. We're all so busy. So the idea is that you read this book, it'll take you about 1 hour. And in 1 hour, I will tell you everything you need to do to keep your fruit tree healthy and productive. And if you're willing to do those things, then it's not rocket science. It's not going to be a lifetime pursuit, taking all your time. But what you have to do, you have to do. If after reading this book in 1 hour, you say, hey, I can do this. I will do this. I am willing to take care of those trees properly. I will have a healthy and productive tree. Let's go for it. The book will help you choose the easier to grow cultivars that are disease resistant, that will cross-pollinate, that will work for your unique location. And the book will tell you what you need to do to feed and care for that tree, especially when it's young, and then you are set to go. But if you buy the book and then you think, you know what, I'm not up for it, then it's still a good investment, because then you don't waste your time buying a tree and watching it not do very well. And the problem with buying and planting a tree and giving it a go is you don't know that things aren't going well until 2 or 3 years down the line, when you've invested time and money into the tree. So my goal is to help people get things right from the start. And if I can help people before they even buy their tree, I am super happy. If I can help people when their tree is young to teach them how to prune, I'm really happy too. And I'm happy to help people with older trees as well that just never knew how to care for it. But our success will be best if I can start people off right from the start when they're choosing their tree.
Well, we really appreciate having you on the program and all of this great fruit tree information. How can people, again, find out more about you, your website, and
your book?
And your book, too.
Absolutely. Okay, so they can go to orchardpeople.com. That's my website, where they will find that I have lots of articles on fruit tree care. I have a monthly radio show and podcast where I talk about fruit trees, and every single episode has information about how to grow fruit trees and what you need to know in order to be successful. I also have online courses at orchardpeople.com. So if you're ready to jump in with both feet and you really want to learn how to do it properly, I've got courses that can teach you at orchardpeople.com as well. And my book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast, which I am so excited is the #1 bestseller at the moment on Amazon. People can find at Amazon, either Amazon.com or their local Amazon store. All you have to do is type in Grow Fruit Trees Fast.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for the time you've offered us and the education you provided Holly, myself, and all of our listeners. We thank you for that.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.